355 to Lakeshore Drive. And Ryan, 22 minutes from 95th to downtown. I-57, 20 minutes, I-80 to the Verge, Bishop 419. The northbound tri-state is 70 from the Reagan tollway to the Eyes, and Howard. The other tollways look good. There will be a midday closure of the Cermak Bridge over the Chicago River. Testing today. It's traffic. I'm Jim Calamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. A breezy morning, a little bit of rain or snow could fall. There is a front sweeping through the area. Clouds for the midday. When the sun breaks out this afternoon, a high between 49 and 51. 33 overnight. 32 officially at O'Hare. Your next news update is at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.
Of their medical institutions. There was a post by Reggie Hamilton, who was in China 18 years ago to adopt his daughter. He vividly remembers the cultural comfort with fecal matter and other disease vectors. And remember, this, I think this is still pending, right, whether or not this can spread that way.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Talking about coronavirus. When my wife and I got off the plane 18 years ago to adopt our first daughter, we were taken aback by the split pants. Split pants were pants that children would wear that are open in the crotch area. Crotch.
That's on the list of do not use words here.
That allows them to urinate or defecate unobstructed onto the street or wherever they may be. The theory is that eventually they'll learn to aim it at the toilet or something to that effect.
Yeah, because diapers are expensive.
Hamilton goes on to say there's a greater problem in China than filth, and that's, of course, the command control, the socialism, communism, really. After taking his new daughter to the hospital and seeing that it was as filthy inside as the streets were outside, he knew what was wrong. And there's only one entity selling health care, and that entity is a police state. Two things happen. People have no recourse when the system fails and no incentive to improve it. I was witnessing the kind of maximum, almost brutal efficiency a society must develop when the state is the master and the individual is merely a subject. He goes on, if you don't like conditions in the hospital like where he was at, where are you going to go? This hospital is your last and only stop. You can't opt for a place and then just pay out of your own pocket. The government has capped financial upward mobility. And so just that issue of whether a coronavirus and its spread will be significantly different in the West, and it has been in places like Singapore and Taiwan in the Far East as compared to China, maybe not just the quality of their healthcare infrastructure, but also the cleanliness and hygiene standards that are employed. For more on this topic and related matters, we're pleased to be joined by Josh Philipp. He's a senior investigative reporter for the Epoch Times and host of the China Report. Josh, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
A real pleasure being here. Thank you.
I know you're an expert in the space, which is why we have you on the show. That post from that gentleman who went almost 2 decades ago to adopt his daughter, does that ring true to you today?
It's pretty true, yes. Not just in terms of kind of the way that kids do run around without pants sometimes, but of course, they traditionally do have a very cleanly culture, but that has been eroded by, being under the totalitarian heel of a communist regime for several decades now. And of course, as you mentioned too, you talk about socialism, you talk about free healthcare, you talk about all these things. You get those in the first maybe few years until the system collapses on itself, and then people are forced to kind of build things up again for themselves. That happened in China. They don't get the same kind of benefits we think socialism gives you.
And it is noteworthy. It's one thing to do an America to China comparison. It's another thing to compare China even to countries in relatively close proximity like Taiwan and Singapore, and how the outbreak, particularly in Taiwan, was contained there because they started moving and notifying the public in December, while China was still in obfuscation phase right up until the first week of February.
Yeah, that's accurate. Taiwan is a thorn in the side of the Chinese Communist Party because Chinese people can look right across that piece of water and they can see a country that is what China would be if they did not live under the heel of the Chinese Communist Party. It is a very well-developed, very clean, first-world country, prosperous, harmonious, government works, and it's one of the main reasons why the Chinese Communist Party has this whole thing where they try to claim Taiwan as part of their country. They don't acknowledge the government. They block Taiwan from accessing things like the WHO, so they can't be part of the WHO even when facing a possible pandemic like this.
And with respect to China's response and the accuracy of the reporting they're providing to the rest of the world, it seems to have improved. At least that's the posture of the administration. When Pence was on with Bartiromo over the weekend, he basically said, we have CDC folks that are in communication with the Chinese and getting sort of independent third-party verification on the number of infected and the number of hospitalizations and the number of deaths in China. So there was sort of a heightened confidence in the Chinese reporting on the spread of the coronavirus in China, even if there was still a little bit of skepticism. It seems to have the quality of the information or accuracy of it seems to have improved, at least according to the Trump administration.
If it has improved on the government level, we have not seen it on the social level because I haven't seen it. The Chinese Communist Party still appears to be very fully suppressing all information on the number of cases, except for this kind of set low number they have coming out. Mm-hmm. The lockdown of the cities does not seem to be opening up, even though they're feigning that they're going to try to open it up. They had some factories open back up. They put people to work. They found people at the work who had the virus and locked down the whole factory with everyone who returned to work locked inside with them. We had leaked documents at Epoch Times showing that the number of cases in some areas was over 50 times what they were saying it was. And so if the Trump administration is getting numbers from them that they believe are accurate, those numbers are not being shown to the public.
And what about rural areas of China? Places outside of, say, Wuhan and Beijing?
Well, they're not in the same kind of lockdown as the big cities are. More than 80 cities right now are in lockdown in China. And Wuhan is, of course, the worst of that, Wuhan being the epicenter of the virus, and Wuhan being kind of the main transit hub of all of China. If you're going to travel between the north and south, you have to go through Wuhan. A lot of the rural areas are not in the same lockdown, and a lot of people in those areas are very paranoid. There have been reports of people barricading roads so people can't travel through. There have been reports of people with guns, basically chasing people out or who knows what else. I don't know how they got them because I didn't think people there could get guns. But right. These are the reports we're getting from the ground there.
Well, also, too, there's been no reports of this, at least that I've seen, but it would hardly be a surprise if the Chinese communists took the approach of Kim Jong-un, at least reportedly took, which is to shoot on sight a man who was infected with coronavirus in North Korea. You watch that One Child Nation documentary on their one-child policy, or we know, thanks to your reporting and others reporting, on the effectively concentration camps in which they have imprisoned Uyghur Muslims in China. You wouldn't be surprised if they would engage in grotesque measures against their own people who are infected or in areas where the virus is spread.
I wouldn't be surprised one bit, as much as I hate to say it. There have been videos of guys, I don't know what the location of it, there were videos in China of men in these big hazmat suits, and they look like doctors, but they're wearing bulletproof vests, and they're carrying rifles, and they're carrying pistols, and they're ratcheting their pistols like they're getting ready for something, and they're walking down the street fully armed. There have been reports. Actually, there was one viral video that went around, and a lot of media came out and said, "Oh, it's fake, and it was a picture of body bags moving. In other words, there was suspicion in China that they were putting people in body bags, that they were still alive, and they were incinerating them. Keep in mind, they have 40 mobile incinerators moving around the city, which they claim are for dead animals, and the virus is not affecting animals. So what are they for? The media claimed the video was fake, based on nothing, based solely on the fact that they don't want to believe it, based on the fact that they can't verify it. Personally, I don't think that's a reason to write something off as fake. But, Believe what you will. PolitiFact says it's fake. And it's true, too. The Chinese Communist Party. I mean, look, this is one of the reasons why a lot of guys like myself do not believe the virus is anywhere near as, say, contained as the Chinese Communist Party wants people to think. Because for the Chinese Communist Party, there's two things they care about in terms of social stability. One is the fear among the Chinese. The Chinese Communist Party needs to be more scary than anything else in the country so people don't rise up against it, so people don't start questioning it. They have lost that because of the way they've handled this. People are more terrified of the virus than they are of the Chinese Communist Party. They've lost that key element of control. The other part is money.
Go ahead.
And
go ahead.
they've shut down. Yeah, they've shut down the entire economy of the country, which tells me that they fear this virus more than they do the instability they're risking from basically destroying their own economy and from losing that control element of fear. To me, this says that the Chinese Communist Party regards this as a bigger threat than anything we've seen before.
Apple's Tim Cook said on Friday that he was optimistic that the Chinese government was containing the virus, that the number of reported infections had gone down, and that Apple was starting to reopen some of its factories to maintain its supply chain intact. How do you respond to Cook's pronouncements?
Well, I mean, I'd like to be optimistic. I'd like to think it's contained. At the same time, I have trouble believing guys like that, mainly because the stock market is tanking because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Supply chains are being affected. When you have guys like that coming out, he has to think of his board. He has to think of his shareholders. And look, the stocks are crashing because of this. Again, they can't sell products because of this. It's in his full interest to come out and say everything's under control. The Chinese Communist Party has everything under control. Don't worry about it. We're going to be reopening our factories. I would question how safe those factories are for the workers, to be honest. But I'd take it with a grain of salt coming from someone who has financial interest in saying that.
A lot of people are wondering, because there has been a lot less reporting on this for obvious reasons, about the Hong Kong protesters, those freedom protesters in Hong Kong, and if that is still as robust as it was prior to the outbreak of the virus. Is that still pushing forward, and potentially at some point, if you can get, as you were sort of describing, some equal and opposite reaction on the mainland, well, not opposite reaction, equal reaction in the direction opposite the regime on the mainland, that you could really jeopardize the Communist Politburo there?
Right. So the protests in Hong Kong are still happening. They are not as robust as before, but they're still pretty robust. Keep in mind, there are only about 7 million people in Hong Kong, and about 2 million people were out on the street protesting. So 2 million people on the street protesting out of 7 million population, and you can imagine how many people supported them, but didn't want to, miss out on work or didn't feel like going out and protesting and out on the street at night. And so the protests are still going on. They're still able to, they're more able to wear their face masks now, because if you remember, the Chinese Communist Party put in place a face mask ban where they couldn't cover their faces. Now that's out the window. And yes, it is very much a threat to the Chinese Communist Party, because not only is it still going on, not only are they not giving up, but it shows that, one, people, again, are more concerned about the Chinese Communist Party taking over in Hong Kong than they are about risking the virus, which says a lot about Hong Kong, I'd say. And two, if I'd say the image of Hong Kong gets out, if their message reaches mainland China, the Chinese Communist Party also regards that as a massive threat to their stability.
Josh Philipp, senior investigative reporter for the Epoch Times and host of the China Report. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Construction spending at an all-time high. Chevron offering buyouts to trim its workforce. FedEx appoints the first African-American female as a divisional CEO. Those stories next. In a recent survey, investors shared what they felt were the greatest threats to their retirement. It's no surprise the most common threats include stock market volatility, economic uncertainty, conflict in the Middle East, the 2020 presidential impeachment, and election. Unfortunately, there are many threats beyond your control that can affect your retirement savings. At Goldco, a leader in precious metals, the team believes one way to protect your investment portfolio is with physical gold and silver.